Can a deaf person become a pilot? Let's find out on One-on-One. Hello, I'm Dan Milliken. This is One-on-One. We've got a really good one for you. We're at the Flying Eyes booth at AirVenture. This is being released later. If you go to flyingeyesoptics.com, use our discount code taking off, all caps, one word, you can get 10% off. Also, Clemens Insurance. Jerry can help you at clemensinsurance.net. Let's get to it. I have with me a very special guest. I have Ryan, who is deaf, and I have Bobby, who is our translator. So, Ryan, thank you for being here today.
You're welcome.
Okay, Ryan, first off, tell me a little of your background.
Well, I became deaf when I was 2 years old. I had spinal meningitis, and I became completely deaf in both ears. I grew up in the Maryland area. I moved to Indiana, and then ended up moving back and settling in the Washington, D.C. I live in Northern Virginia right now. I started flying in 1995 while I was going to college at the Miami University of Ohio. They have an aviation program there. So I thought, I got my PPL in 1996. So I really enjoy the aviation world. It's opened up a lot of places that I can go, see, and meet great people.
What are the rules and restrictions for getting a private license if you're deaf?
Great question. I get that question a lot, actually. Typically, we focus on communications. How can deaf people talk to the tower? And the short version is they don't. So they fly under VFR rules, and we're not required to communicate with the tower unless it's in an uncontrolled airspace. There are over 5,000 airports in the United States, give or take. Maybe 300 of them have towers. But most of the U.S. airspace is uncontrolled. So the rule is you have to have, for a third-class medical certificate, it will say not valid for use when radio is required.
Okay.
So that means outside of controlled airspace, which is A, B, or C, or D, I can or A, B, or C, then I can fly in those areas. D is unique. I actually have experience going to a Class Delta airport by calling ahead to the airport and letting them know that I'm going to be coming, and to ask for light gun signals. So with those light gun signals, they are able to approve me to land and assist me with taxi and parking. I'm going to anticipate your next question. A deaf person can get an instrument rating. In 2006, I had a gentleman by the name of Stephen Hobson. He was the first deaf person to get his instrument ticket. It was 2017, the first female pilot got her IFR ticket. Female deaf pilot. Now, they have to fly with an instrument-rated co-pilot and be able to have effective communications in the cockpit. That pilot also has to be IFR rated, but the deaf pilot that's IFR rated can be the pilot in command and make the decisions for that flight.
You can fly into Delta. Can you fly into Charlie with a pre-arrangement and light guns? No.
No,
Okay.
At this time, no, sir, because the Charlies they require establishment of two-way radio communications for entrance by rule, and I cannot establish that before going in. With the Delta, it's a different rules. There's different rules in our Class Delta airport.
I heard that you had medical issues and you went across the way here to the FAA and was able to get it in 20 minutes what was taking years. Is that true?
Yes, it is. Really, that's the cherry on top of coming here to Oshkosh, to AirVenture. I come here to meet people, see the planes, just like everyone else. And we got that done. But a few years ago, I got thyroid cancer, and it's very survivable. I had surgery. I had the thyroid removed. I'm on medication. I have obstructive sleep apnea. But my medical had expired. I submitted all the paperwork trying to get my medical back through the AME, or Air Medical Examiner. And he submitted everything to the FAA Medical. And that was back in February of this year. So here we are at the end of July, and I haven't heard a thing. I was becoming concerned that maybe, they've reviewed it or haven't reviewed it, and they weren't making a decision, or they were delaying it, and I didn't know what the backlog was like. So I came here to Oshkosh. I wasn't planning to even speak with the FAA. We actually happened into the FAA building there in order to check out the hyperbaric chamber, and I saw that they had a FAA medical booth. So I went up there and I asked them, I said, so I submitted paperwork in February. What time frame can I expect a response within? And I said, hang on just a quick second. Let me pull up your record. Come back in 20 minutes. We'll review it here and now. We might be able to issue you a third-class medical. And I was like, oh, okay, wow, all right. So of course, I was definitely back. But, that was the longest 20 or 30 minutes of my life. What's going to be the news? I went and sat down with their medical doctor. He reviewed all of my case in 20 minutes, asked me a few questions, said everything looks good. Come back tomorrow and pick up your third-class medical. We're going to approve it. So I'm back.
How did he feel in that moment?
I knew I had my wings, my pilot license, but I felt that they've been folded up behind me. And when I got the medical, I felt like my wings were spreading again, ready to go. I was so excited. I got very emotional.
Well, that's amazing. And by the way, for you guys watching, if you are ever at AirVenture and you have a medical issue, this is so cool that here, just across from the Flying Eyes booth, is the FAA Safety Center. They have flight surgeons there to review your cases in 20 minutes. That's just amazing. So kudos to the FAA. A lot of people give them flack, but that is amazing.
Amen.
What would you say to other deaf people who thought flying was impossible?
I would say it's very reasonable for a deaf person and a hearing person to assume that deaf people can't fly. There's been no point in history when a deaf person has been prohibited from flying. In fact, the first person who crossed from the East Coast to West Coast is named Cal Rogers. He did it in 2 months. He crashed 19 times. This was in 1911, okay, when planes were just first being developed. And so he was the first man to cross the continental United States, and he was deaf.
Wow. Cal?
So that set the precedence. Yeah, Cal Rogers. So the FAA never prohibited, they never actually wrote it down, and they recognized that it can be safe. We have a unique situation in the United States to have an engagement from the FAA with the deaf community. We've had deaf pilots since 1911. I believe in 1927, the first certificated pilot was a female in the Dakotas. There are ways to get there. It takes a while. There's some red tape sometimes and some hurdles to jump through or jump over, but there is a path. If you're interested in flying, don't let your assumptions create barriers. Speak with an instructor, and it's really important that the instructor may not know or understand. They will have a learning curve of their own that they will have to go through. But I'm trying to really spread the word and help individuals. As a matter of fact, I just submitted an article to the National Association of Flight Instructors that I'm trying to target certified flight instructors to encourage them to communicate with potential deaf pilots and empower them with information that will help them to help those deaf individuals to get their pilot's license. It can be done.
That was one of my questions coming up, was how many instructors know sign language?
Probably very, very, very few. But it's not required that they know sign language or learn
Okay.
sign language. If I was speaking to an instructor right now, I would tell them you have to remove the mindset of everything has to be communicated through an audiological or audio medium. You have to transition to a visual mode of communication. I would make the argument that instructors who learn how to teach visually, with the support of the deaf student pilot, they can actually become better instructors for everyone. They'll be able to communicate with hearing people who are more visual learners. They'll be able to give a visual type of instruction and what the plane needs to do and what the pilot needs to do. So if you're using, a whiteboard, using hand signals, using pre-established signs or shortcuts that may not be formal signs, think through what's going to be accomplished on that flight and talk about it. You can communicate with, American Sign Language, obviously, use the sign for that, or it could be made up on the fly and is agreed between the two individuals. Whatever works, works. The point is effective communication.
At my airport, it's uncontrolled. There's a restaurant, and it can be the Wild West. Us pilots get really perturbed at people coming in Nordo. Have you any funny stories of people getting upset that you come in and land not on the radio?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I do. The assumption is you've got a plane, you've got a radio. You're
Right.
gonna be using it. If you don't use it, you're not safe. But for us, deaf pilots, we are very visual. I used to fly out of Gaithersburg, Maryland, which is, North Washington, D.C., and it's very busy. There's a lot of interesting chatter on the radio. Some of it's spicy. You have to be, there are established methods for entering the pattern. So I try to give a lot of breathing room to other traffic, and I think if we're deaf, we do that. It's typically not a problem, and we're able to enter the pattern and come say. Sometimes I've had someone come up and say, "Hey, why have you done that?" Or, "Hey, if this isn't working," then I'm open to it. I say, "Hey, well, I'm deaf," and they go, "Oh." As soon as they see that, they're shocked in the face. They look like deer in the headlights. They get that look, right? And they're like, "Are you joking or something?" I said, No. And then I start to explain to them that deaf pilots can fly. I have a private pilot license. I show it to them. And we have very good safety records. I did an internet search. It's not scholarly, but a cursory search. And so far, there's only 2 known deaf pilots that crashed. One in the 1970s and one in 2005. And both were due to mechanical problems. It wasn't because they created an unsafe condition with hearing pilots. So typically, the conversation will lead to questions about how did you become a pilot and you're deaf? And how do you communicate? And I go through the same things that we just talked about. And we're safe, and it's safe for a deaf pilot to fly. And I like to spread that word and teach other pilots and explain that there's a safe way and a published way to enter the traffic pattern, not just for hearing pilots, but for deaf pilots as well. And that's what really creates a safe environment at an uncontrolled airport like yours.
Are there any aids in the cockpit to help deaf pilots communicate?
So, back when I was learning and starting in the 90s, it was all steam gauges. Paper charts, stopwatches, compasses. And now, with GPS, ADS-B, in and out, and what we are able to see, and a lot of people are running Garmin Pilot or ForeFlight, you can see radio communications. You see information that's coming in. There's a visual representation of the location of other aircraft. The technology has come a long ways, in the last 30 years. And I'm looking forward to see what comes in the future. But at this moment, is there some way to use technology in order to, speech to text or text to speech? No, there isn't. But I would imagine someday there might be able to. We might be able to see that in our lifetime through AI and other things in order to ease some communication in and out. I don't think it will happen just because there's a need in the deaf pilot community, but airlines, as traffic increases and there's frequency congestion, there may be a need to transition to a data communication solution that's going to actually help all of aviation.
Last question, what plane do you fly?
I've flown Warrior, 182. Most of my recent hours before I stopped flying was actually in a Cessna 182. I love the sky lane. The takeoff and the climb rate in a Cessna 182, I really enjoyed that. But we were actually able to fly in, Bobby and I, and one of the most enjoyable flights that I've had, Virginia to Oshkosh, and that was in a Mooney.
Well, congratulations on getting your wings back. That is so awesome. We are happy for you. And thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you. You're welcome.
All right, guys, this is about as inspirational as it gets. What Ryan is doing is phenomenal. I'm so happy he's got his wings back and he's going to take to the skies really soon. So thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. And don't forget our sponsors like 67D. They make the best camera and tablet mounts out there, 67D.com, MPSprotects.com, ZVision, XEVision.com, and Colton Mortgage, Colton taking off. I really appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching One on One.
We are the ones that can provide the solution to the problem.
I'm having a blast.